Welcome to the Stairway to Heaven. We're coming to you bringing insights into the ever-changing high-frequency currents now bathing the planet and their effect on us all. The source of vital information for the evolving human being. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. When illusions die, reevaluating reality. Show me a crowd of 1,000 people, and I'll show you 1,000 separate realities. But wait, reality is reality, you may say. This may be so, but everyone's perception of reality is impacted by their filters. These filters are comprised of a combination of our culture, genetics, race, upbringing, social economic standing, religious beliefs, or lack thereof, education, experience, and damage. The above also dictate how we relate to the world, our resilience, adaptability, and communication with others. Communication is all about trying to get separate realities to mesh. The meshing of realities requires finding a place of unity, or at least agreement. Yet we're living in a very polarized judgmental reality where each individual has a tendency to judge their way as the way. Anyone that doesn't agree with them is wrong. Marriage is all about trying to bridge the reality gap. Unfortunately, we often choose our partners based on how we see them from our reality, not theirs. This results in falling in love with our own perception of what a person is, often based on their self-portrait, rather than the truth of that person. Once we start to recognize the discrepancy between our original assessment of our spouse and the truth of who they are, illusions die. Then we become disillusioned, and the strife begins, often ending in divorce. This unfortunate situation is by no means limited to marriage. It rears its ugly head between business partners, roommates, friends. The list is endless. Anywhere there are divergent realities, there's a risk of such a breakdown. The more divergent the realities, the more delusion is involved and the less common ground. There are other contributors to these separate realities. We each have a different set of conditioning from our family of origin, even if we come from the same family. If we're a boy or a girl, firstborn, middle child, or youngest, from the current marriage or a previous one, have abusive parents or loving ones, all impact how we're treated and the experiences upon which we base our self-image. These influences and more dictate how we identify ourselves and how we feel about ourselves, as well as the world at large. The greater the damage, the lower our self-esteem. If we have low self-esteem, we judge we're not good enough in our natural expression and strive to be something else. This promotes creating an illusion of who we are and what we are, taking us further from our true nature and our ability to effectively communicate. Yet each of us is so much more than the sum and total of what this influence has taught us. In fact, we all have built a false reality based upon a collection of lies. You're a boy, so it's your responsibility too. You're a girl, so you can't. You're a Christian, and therefore you must, and so on. Now, as the ambient frequency rises, shedding more light on the situation, many of us are starting to question who we've been taught we are and what is possible for us. To evolve with the times, we must embrace the death of illusions. No easy task, as it can involve dying to who we thought we were and what life is. As we start to question, we tend to see through the illusion and start to shift our perceptions. This shift can be so massive that it rips apart the very foundation upon which we have built our ego, identity, self-image, and self-esteem. We may find we've been striving for all the wrong things based on those lies, that life we have built is not one we wish to live. The people in our world are no longer a match. The status quo may become intolerable. When this happens, we start to rapidly shed all that doesn't resonate with our new perceptions. It may be tempting to try to return to a more unconscious state, so we are not required to upset the apple cart. But who we are will rise again and again, just like the sun on the morrow, as it's the truth of our nature and lies cannot stand long in the light that now bathes us all. The gap between individuals created by separate realities is where our solidarity can be hacked into and we can be exploited. Our very consumer-based society controls by encouraging us to take on a false identity, one that says we're not good enough or happy enough, that if we just acquire whatever it is they're selling, then we'll be successful and happy. War would not be possible without the misunderstandings created by living in divergent realities. These misunderstandings set up the perfect environment for judgment and polarization. War is a lucrative business. It only makes sense that there are people very invested in keeping us judgmental and polarized enough to participate. Judgment and polarization are the root of all evil, so to speak. The old world was and is run from judging what's right or wrong and sticking to our guns. Don't confuse me with the facts. My mind's made up. This has us polarizing against anyone or anything that doesn't agree with our worldview and demonizing them. It's not a giant leap from demonizing an entire group of people to making war upon them. After all, they're the villain, right? They challenge our beliefs. Everyone knows that if you want a still photography to accurately represent a location, one must take multiple shots from different angles to create a panorama of the scene. The same can be said of multiple perspectives of reality as represented by more than one person. By combining perspectives, viewpoints, and realities, we can come much closer to accessing the truth than any one individual can alone based on their limited perceptions as seen through their personal filters. Judging others wrong if they don't agree with our viewpoint and polarizing against them robs us of this opportunity. My son and I were on a backpacking trip in the Colorado wilderness. One of our goals for the trip was photographing wildlife. We each had a camera with a telescopic lens and two-way radios. At one point, when we were hiking up a mountain for a better view, the trail split, one going to one side of the mountain and the other to the other. We discussed which one to take. My son came up with the idea that we would be able to see more if we split up. Not long after going our separate ways, my son radioed he'd run across a group of bighorn sheep and was going to take pictures. Not long thereafter, I discovered a bachelor herd of elk and proceeded to photograph them. What we learned by splitting up was that the mountain had elk and bighorns. Now, if he and I would have approached this situation by judging and polarizing against any differing perspective, we would have spent all our time arguing if they were bighorns or elk and missed out on getting the pictures of both. While the advantage of combining facts from divergent perspectives in this example may seem obvious and to do otherwise ludicrous, the same holds true in comparing personal realities. It's through unity, not polarization, that a larger truth can be known. As I've often reminded, everything expresses according to frequency. Therefore, it stands to reason that each of our separate realities carries a different set of frequencies. There's a natural push-pull in human relationships based on these frequencies. We're drawn to anyone whose frequency resonates with our own. This determines who we surround ourselves with. At present, we're seeing a lot of polar opposites forming into groups of people that resonate with each other while demonizing others. Pro-Trump versus against him, pro-abortion or right-to-lifers, pro-Ukraine or pro-Russia, all have their own courts, and never the twain shall meet. While resonance may help us find agreement, judgments against and demonizing anything we do not resonate with stops personal growth in its tracks. To expand, we need to be flexible enough to entertain other realities. There's another downside to judgment and polarization. The more polarized individuals and groups become, the more controllable. All anyone need do is tell them what they want to hear, and they have their full attention. It's simple, once a polarized individual or group is engaged, to feed them more misinformation supporting their stance and dictate their responses. Fortunately, many of us realize we're not being given all the facts on any issue and leave the jury out. When standing in a neutral watch and wait attitude, we're much more difficult to control. By remaining neutral, we're light on our feet and able to adjust our concept of reality as new facts emerge. In addition, a neutral person cannot be led around by his or her judgments. If you don't want them to get your goat, don't have one. Unfortunately, the more damage we carry, the more defenses resulting in less flexibility. Tendency to polarize and be inflexible is directly related to one's negative experiences and the avoidance of a repeat to stay safe. This takes us out of the present. We're projecting the past onto the present and operating from past circumstances that probably don't apply to what's currently going on. The past situation rarely accurately reflects the current one, rendering our responses inaccurate and ineffectual. If we're in the past, we're powerless as our ability to manifest result is only found in the present moment. By coming from past damage, we resonate with it and end up recreating its frequency rather than the one of the outcome we desire. This reinforces our belief in the negative outcome, and we further polarize. I knew that was going to happen. You can't ever trust, fill in the blank. This happens every time. I'll never do it again. And there goes yet another piece of our mobility, further distorting our perception of reality and our options within it. In addition, once we make such a judgment, it's operational in every aspect of our life, often without our conscious knowledge. The key here is to learn from past experience without being controlled by it. Entire cultures exist in an agreed-upon reality caused by past trauma. Whether from famine or genocide, the shared damage resonates and creates a divergent reality wherein the situation is repeated. If we're each consistently triggered into the past according to our personal damage and that of our lineage, no one is present to find agreement, much less alter outcome. If we can't alter outcome, we have no hope of evolving into our potential. Currently, the rising frequency affords us the opportunity to evolve into unity. Yet, how can we become cohesive enough to participate in the unified field if we all live in different illusionary worlds and squabble over the discrepancies? Is it a bighorn or an elk? Maybe, just maybe, it's both. As in all things, this is an inside job. The degree to which we're free to shift our perceptions and embrace a more cohesive existence is limited by our personal unprocessed damage. The antidote is to be willing to let go of judgments. This can be accomplished by examining them more closely and uncovering where they came from. Often, we'll find most judgments are anchored in the past that no longer exists and do not apply to the present. To subject our present to these judgments recreates the past rather than the future we desire. To grow, to evolve to our potential, the very potential the increased light is making available, old illusions and judgments must give way to a more cohesive and unified experience. In all reality, it's not a matter of if illusions will die. In this frequency, their death is inevitable. It's already well underway. The only question remaining is if we'll let go of what's not and come along. Thank you for joining me, Gwilda Wiyaka, on the Stairway to Heaven, where we provide updates on the energetic currents facilitating our evolution into conscious, powerful co-creators. As I'm sure you've noticed, not only do the Stairway to Heaven episodes stand alone, but they weave together to form a map to evolution and personal empowerment as we enter the new era. To revisit this or any of our past episodes, visit our archives at www.stairwaytoheavenmedia.com. If you'd like to find out more about me, my school, and the evolutionary tools we offer, visit www.findyourpathhome.com. Until next time, may you be blessed on your sacred path to wholeness. We are here. The time is now.